Hiya kids, this is Ivan. I'm going to talk to you now about multiclassing and how I handle it in my D&D game. And it's a little controversial, I don't go by the book, but you can yell at me later and post nasty comments if you'd like. Now, first off, I think you're better off in most cases going with a single class and sticking with it. I think you'll be more powerful, probably have a better time. But I understand the allure. I've certainly multiclassed a lot myself. Multiclassing, believe, got its start with the elf, and when I started playing Moldvay Basic, you could play an elf, and he was a fighter magic user. And so while a fighter needed 2,000 XP to progress to second level, and a magic user needed 2,500, the elf needed 4,000. So he progressed a little slower, but he made up for it by being a lot more powerful than his comrades in a lot of ways. Now, I don't really like the way first edition handled multiclassing, where you're progressing in two classes at once. And by the same token, I really don't like the way how they handle dual classing, which is where you have a midlife crisis, so you just switch all of a sudden from one class to the other. Now, by the book, when you multi-class, and you have two classes or even three classes at once, you split the XP between the two different classes. So what ends up happening is one class is leveling faster than the other, and it gets a little messy, it gets a little complicated. And I also didn't like the fact that it was just restricted to non-human characters. Now, dual classing, on the other hand, was even weirder. It was restricted only to humans. And essentially what happened was this. You're progressing as a fighter or whatever, and you decide you want to be a magic user. Now you're a 6th level fighter. So what happens is this. You stop progressing as a fighter. You stop progressing in hit dice. And you start off as a 1st level magic user. Now, you can go off and earn the low level of XP you need. You're still using the original tables from being a 1st level character, 2nd level, etc. But should you use any of your abilities from the class that you started out with, your original class, you get no XP for the entire adventure. So you're pretty much cut off from adventuring with your pals because you've changed to magic user and you're fire off your one magic missile and you're like, well, guys, I'm out of this. I can't use armor or swing a sword or anything. So I'm going to hang out in the back and carry the loot. And so I just never found it that fun, and not a lot of people did it. And eventually you got more hit dice if you've got to the level where you progressed past what you had been. So once you became a 7th level magic user and you had been a 6th level fighter, you finally get some hit dice, you finally get to progress, and you finally get to start using skills from both classes. Hooray, finally. My suspension of disbelief just kind of failed at that point. I just figured that's not how a real person would operate. Likewise, I don't like the D20 mechanic and Pathfinder mechanic, whatever, where you can kind of just take levels in different classes. My suspension of disbelief kind of fails there too. Like somebody else said, people pretty much take like 1 or 2 life paths their entire life. And unless you're like a polymath like Ben Franklin or something like that, you're not going to be, jack of all trades. It's just not going to work like that. So for me, I don't believe it at that point. I'm just scratching my head and saying, nah, I'm calling foul on this one. So here's what I let you do. Anybody can multi-class. Anybody can dual class. You're going to start throwing rocks now, but that's how I do it. If you multi-class, you level all at once, just like the BX Elf. You don't split the XP. It's just this is your new XP requirement based on the XP requirements of the two classes. You get to use all your abilities. You're a level or so behind your peers, but you make up for it by being kind of powerful. Also, I let you drop a class after a certain number of levels. If you're just not having a good time with it, I had a player that was starting out as a magic user thief, and he was just finding the amount of XP was a bit too much. He was a bit too behind people, and he really wasn't using his thief skills all that much. After a few levels, I let him drop it. Now, I wouldn't let you drop it at 2nd level, because then you're kind of getting thief skills for free or whatever it is. But, at that point, he just wasn't having fun with it. So I said, you know what, you're just have made this life decision, once and for all, never to progress as a thief again. So you've got these minor thief skills, and now you're going to continue on being magic. And so I just went by the experience points a magic user would need from that point forward. If you dual class my game, it sort of works like the switching classes in D20, except only a little bit. You can't go back. You made this choice, you're going back. You can't go back. Now, you declare ahead of time that this is what you want to do. So say you're a 5th level fighter, and you just say, hey, Ivan, I want to switch to magic use from now on. So what I'm going to make you do is, you're going to get to 6th level. You're going to need to get the XP it would take a 5th level magic user, not a fighter, to get to a 6th level magic user. When you've done that, hooray, you're a 1st level magic user too. You get your D4 hit die. You're essentially a 6th level character. You can keep using all your fighter skills while you go out and adventure. But every time you gain another level, so now you're 6th level, if you want to get to 7th level, you need to get the amount of experience points that a magic user would need to get from 6th level to 7th level. I'm not starting you way back at the beginning of the tables. So in that respect, it kind of works like the unified XP tables, with switching a class in something like Pathfinder. But it's not something people normally did in 1E. But the benefit you get is you get to use all your nifty skills and powers and all that junk right from the get-go. So you can swing your sword, you can do all that kind of stuff, use your improve to hit table and all that stuff, and still adventure and gain levels as a magic user, and still adventure with your friends. So I think it's a little more fun. But once you've made that decision to do it, you're not going back. Class and a half is an interesting thing, and I'll cover this more later, but I let people do stuff like that. If you really say, hey, I want to be a fighter, but I want to be kind of a sneaky fighter, we can look at the experience tables and stuff and say, hey, and the skills, and say, hey, geez, well, what do you want? Do you want to be able to just hide in shadows and move silently and just be stealthy? And maybe we'll add a little XP to what you need. So maybe you have closer to Paladin XP or something, and maybe you're like, well, hey, how about I progress on the cleric to hit tables instead of the fighter to hit tables, so I don't need so much XP? We can sit around and do that. And like I alluded to in my other classes episode, if you will, there's a lot of neat classes they came out with in the Dragon magazine too, so we can mess around with stuff like that. If you don't want to be a strict, fighter thief or fighter magic user, we can see if we can do something, meet you in the middle and have some fun creating a new class. But that's pretty much how I handle multi-classing and dual classing. I know it's not by the book, by either book, but it's what works for me and what keeps me from scratching my head and having my suspension of disbelief just evaporate during the game.